Welcome to episode 4 of the MBT podcast. In the previous episode, we discussed session 2, titled Problems with Mentalizing. In this episode, we will continue with session 3. So, I want you to just imagine for a second that you're sitting in a meeting, your boss offers some, relatively mild feedback on a project you did, and suddenly your heart is just hammering against your ribs. Your jaw is completely locked, and you feel this overwhelming, almost violent urge to just flee the room.
Right, which makes zero logical sense in a conference room.
Exactly. You aren't in physical danger, like the building isn't on fire, so why on earth is your body preparing for war? Well, today, our mission for this deep dive is to decode that exact moment. We're looking really deep into the biological cheat code of your brain to understand the raw physical mechanics of our internal lives.
And, doing that requires us to draw a very hard line between two words that you, the listener, probably use interchangeably every single day, and those words are emotion and feeling.
Yeah, we definitely just throw those around.
Oh, constantly. You might say, like, I'm feeling angry, or I have strong emotions about this, but biologically and neurologically, they are entirely different beasts. And honestly, if you don't understand the gap between those two concepts, you will basically spend your entire life being totally baffled by your own reactions.
Okay, let's define the terms then. Because to really understand this gap, we actually have to strip away all the complex philosophical human psychology we normally talk about on this show, right?
Yeah, we have to go way back to basics.
Right. We need to look at mentalization-based treatment, or MBT. The foundational literature, specifically the publications on MBT, makes it super clear that we first have to look under the hood at our base mammalian hardware.
Exactly, the hardware. When we talk about emotions in this really strict biological sense, we are not talking about a conscious thought at all. Yeah. We are talking about automatic, innate physical reactions. An emotion is purely a physiological survival signal, and it is universal. It activates the exact same regions in the brain. It floods the body with the exact same neurochemicals, and it triggers the exact same autonomic nervous system responses in absolutely everyone.
Wow, everyone.
Literally everyone. Whether you are, a software engineer in Tokyo, a hunter-gatherer 50,000 years ago, or literally a golden retriever, the biological emotion is identical.
Which means, and this is a big paradigm shift,
Yeah.
an emotion is never inherently good or bad.
Right.
Like, that's a trap we fall into constantly.
I get all the time.
We moralize them. We say, anger is bad or fear means you're weak. But biologically, it's just a fire alarm. It's a completely neutral alert system.
Precisely. It's just data. Now, a feeling, on the other hand, is what happens when your conscious mind finally notices that physical reaction.
Okay, so feeling is the awareness part.
Yes. Your brain recognizes the elevated heart rate, the cortisol spike, the tension in your shoulders, and you attach a cognitive label to it. You say, oh, I am sad, or I am anxious.
Got it.
That cognitive labeling is the key. The emotion is the body's reaction, but the feeling is your mind's translation or interpretation of that reaction. And I should probably note, as the publications on MBT point out, there are newer social emotions that developed later in mammalian evolution. Things like shame or jealousy, right? Those are more complex.
Sure, they take more brain power.
Exactly. But the core survival emotions, those are ancient. They are pure hardwired biology.
Okay, so let me try an analogy here to sort of map this out. It sounds a lot like a computer system to me.
Okay, I like that. Go with it.
So the emotions are the raw background hardware processing. You don't always see it happening, but the cooling fan starts spinning up, the hard drive starts whirring, the motherboard is pulling way more electricity because of some intensive background task.
Yeah.
That's the biology. The feelings, then, are the software notification that actually pops up on your monitor to tell you, warning, CPU is overheating.
That is a perfect analogy. The hardware part of that works flawlessly, but let's push the software side a bit further, because it's not just a passive pop-up notification. A feeling is your brain frantically trying to translate raw machine code into English.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The hardware is doing exactly what it was programmed to do by millions of years of evolution, right? It's pumping adrenaline, dilating your pupils. But your conscious mind has to actually read that data and figure out what it means. And here is the terrifying part about this whole system. The hardware doesn't need the software to function.
Wait, Does that mean your body can be in the middle of a full-blown emotional reaction, fire off all those survival signals, while your conscious mind is completely oblivious?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Your body can be totally flooded with cortisol, your muscles are prepped to sprint, your digestive system has entirely shut down to conserve energy, which is the full biological hardware response to a threat, and that software notification just hasn't registered on your screen at all.
That is wild.
You might just think, oh, I've had too much coffee today, or, I slept wrong, my neck is tight. Your conscious mind is entirely out of the loop.
Okay, that is genuinely unsettling. If my body is running these intense background programs without my permission, I want to know what exactly those programs are.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
And the publications on MBT outline 7 basic survival emotions.
Right.
Let's not just list them. I want to track how they actually evolve to keep us alive. Because if they're survival tools, they must have specific jobs.
They do. They each have a very specific biological action and a function.
So let's start with our baseline interaction with the world. Curiosity or interest.
Yeah, curiosity is brilliant because, well, most people don't think of it as a primary survival emotion. They think of it as a personality trait. But look at the mechanism. The biological action of curiosity is simply to explore.
Right.
When a mammal encounters something novel, the brain's dopamine system engages, completely rewarding the animal for investigating. Because if early mammals weren't driven by this deep neurochemical urge to, explore the next valley or sniff a new plant, they wouldn't have found new food sources.
Or adapted to changing environments, I guess.
Exactly. Curiosity is literally the biological engine of adaptation.
But, exploration inherently brings risk, right? Like you explore the next valley and suddenly, boom, there's a predator, which triggers the next core emotion, fear.
Precisely. Fear is the ultimate brake pedal. The moment a threat is perceived, your amygdala fires, bypassing your logical brain entirely. It's so fast, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system. Blood rushes away from your skin and your digestive organs, and it pumps directly into your major muscle groups.
So you can run away.
Exactly. You are biologically forced into fight, flight, or freeze. It is pure, immediate physical protection.
Okay, but what happens when you can't run? When the threat is actively challenging your safety or your resources and you're backed into a corner, I assume that brings us to anger.
It does.
And again, culture tells us anger is a bad emotion, right? Like it's a loss of control. But biologically, the publications on MBT frame anger as boundary protection.
Yes. If fear is about avoidance, anger is about confrontation. And the physical mobilization of anger is just fascinating. Unlike fear, where you might freeze up and hold still, anger practically forces you into action. Your heart rate increases, sure, but specifically, your brain prioritizes blood flow to your hands and your jaw.
Wait, really? To your hands and jaw?
Yes, it is literally preparing you to strike or bite.
Oh my God.
It's primal. Without that biological surge of aggressive energy, you wouldn't have the physical capacity to defend your territory or your food or your physical autonomy. So far from being bad, it is a vital, totally necessary survival tool.
Wow. Okay, so curiosity, fear, and anger keep the individual alive against environmental threats. But, mammals don't survive alone. We are pack animals.
Very true.
So the hardware has to have programming to create the pack in the first place. That's where the reproductive drive comes in. The fourth emotion is lust, or sexual attraction.
Right. And the biological function there is pretty obvious, right? Ensuring reproduction so the genetic line continues. The action is basically seeking approach. But neurologically, lust does something else really critical. It bridges the gap between isolated individuals.
It pulls people together.
Exactly. It forces proximity and interaction, which builds the very first foundational layers of a social group.
But proximity isn't enough, right? Because mammalian babies, and especially human babies, are completely useless at birth.
Totally helpless.
They can't walk, they can't feed themselves, nothing. So lust might create the offspring, but it definitely doesn't keep them alive. That requires the fifth emotion, love or caring.
Exactly. The biological drive to care for another being ensures that the vulnerable members of the pack are actually protected. Neurologically, this is governed by hormones like oxytocin.
The cuddle hormone.
Right, the cuddle hormone. It physically rewards you for nurturing, grooming, and protecting others. We literally cannot survive our early years without this emotion firing in the adults around us. It's what binds the pack together long term.
Which makes the sixth emotion the most revealing one of all to me. Because what happens when that vital pack bond is broken, when you are separated. We call it sadness or separation anxiety.
Yeah, this one is often misunderstood.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I always thought of sadness as a withdrawal. Like when you're sad, you retreat, you hide under the covers, you isolate yourself. But the publications on MBT define the biological action of sadness as appealing to others.
It is. Think about the physical manifestation of deep sadness. The tears, vocal crying, a slumped posture, a specific drooping of your facial muscles.
Yeah.
These are not mechanisms of hiding. They are highly visible visual and auditory alarms.
It's a biological distress beacon
Yes.
that completely reframes it for me. Instead of a quiet internal retreat, sadness is actually an active survival mechanism designed to summon the pack when you are vulnerable. You are broadcasting to your community, hey, I am isolated, I am in danger, do not leave me behind.
A distress beacon is the perfect term for it, because if you are a social mammal and you are isolated from the group, you are in mortal danger. From predators, from starvation, sadness is the loud, incredibly uncomfortable siren pulling you back into the safety of the herd.
And finally, to maintain that herd, we have the seventh emotion, joy or playfulness. Its basic function is to stimulate interaction and keep the group together. But this isn't just about having fun, is it?
Not at all.
The publications on MBT highlight that playfulness is how we actually learn to navigate the world without killing each other.
Yes, the neurobiology of play is just astounding. Think about watching two wolf pups play. They wrestle, they bite, they dominate each other, but they don't actually inflict lethal harm.
Right, it's play fighting.
Exactly. And why do they do it? Because through play, they are literally wiring their prefrontal cortex. They are learning the exact boundary between a friendly nip and a dangerous bite. They are learning social hierarchy, how to read intentions, and how to express their aggression safely.
So it's practice.
It's practice. And for humans, play does the exact same thing. It is a biological simulator that allows us to test the waters of interaction and negotiate conflict without actual life or death risk.
So we have these magnificent seven: curiosity, fear, anger, lust, love, sadness, and joy. Seven perfectly designed, finely tuned evolutionary programs running in the background to ensure we survive.
That's the hardware.
Which brings us to a massive, glaring contradiction. If this hardware is so perfect, why are adults so utterly confused by their own reactions? Why are we all so stressed, anxious, and physically exhausted by our emotions all the time?
Well, because our software gets corrupted as we grow up. That is basically the tragedy of the human experience. Culture, societal norms, and our specific family dynamics, they all teach us how to handle these natural biological imperatives. And very, very often, what we are taught is to actively suppress our own biology.
Yeah, the publications on MBT make a really brilliant comparison here between small children and adults. Like if you look at a toddler, their emotions, the raw biology and their feelings, the conscious awareness, they are perfectly synced up.
Oh, absolutely. If a 2-year-old is experiencing the biological emotion of anger, their entire system aligns perfectly. They scream, they stomp their feet, their face flushes red.
There's no hiding it.
No hiding it at all. The hardware is firing and the software notification is universally understood. They are consciously aware, they are mad, and literally everyone else in the room knows it too. There is zero disconnect.
But as adults, our culture comes in and scrambles the wiring. Let's use like a soundboard analogy. The toddler has their volume dials perfectly plugged into the right instruments. But as we grow up, society comes in, unplugs the cables, and just forces them into the wrong jacks entirely.
That's exactly what happens.
So say you experience the biological emotion of anger because a coworker constantly takes credit for your work. Your boundaries are being crossed. Your body initiates the anger response, heart rate up, jaw tight, preparing to defend your resources. But if your family taught you growing up that anger is impolite or dangerous, your conscious mind refuses to let that software notification pop up.
Right. Your brain essentially censors the translation. It says, nope, we are not allowed to feel angry.
But the biology doesn't just stop, right?
No, it doesn't care about your manners. The adrenaline is still in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Your autonomic nervous system is still fully mobilized for a fight. So instead of recognizing the anger, your brain scrambles the signal and translates that raw, uncomfortable physical arousal into a feeling of like anxiety or panic.
So I want to push on the physical reality of that for a second. If your body is mobilizing to fight, but your brain is refusing to let you acknowledge it, What happens to all that physical energy? Are you essentially trapped in the action phase of a survival emotion, but you're refusing to let it execute its function?
Yes, exactly. You are in a state of suspended mobilization.
Suspended
It
mobilization.
is exactly like putting your car in neutral, stomping the gas pedal to the floor, and just letting the engine scream at the red line. The car isn't moving anywhere, but the engine is literally tearing itself apart.
Ouch.
Yeah. When you suppress the translation of an emotion, you experience what we call somatization, pure physical symptoms, unexplained heart palpitations, chronic migraines, severe gastrointestinal issues, neck and back pain.
Right.
Your body is absorbing the wear and tear of a constant survival response, and your conscious mind has absolutely no idea why it's happening.
Because the software notification has been disabled. So you just sit there and think, wow, my chest really hurts.
Yeah.
Completely unaware that your body is actually desperately trying to execute a boundary defense.
And this total disconnect destroys our day-to-day lives. It really does. You snap at your spouse over nothing. You start crying during a mildly stressful, completely routine meeting. Your scrambled soundboard is playing entirely the wrong tune for the situation, making you totally unpredictable to yourself and to everyone around you.
Which brings us to the core of this entire deep dive and the practical application of MBT. Recognizing this dangerous disconnect is step one. But the goal of the treatment is to actually fix the wiring.
Yes, to plug the cables back into the right jacks.
Right. And the publications on MBT state that the mechanism for this is actively working to recognize and name your emotions. They give this homework exercise. Look back at your past week. What emotions did you experience? Were the feelings clear to you? Or were the emotions vague, leaving you with only physical signals like a tight chest or an exhausted body to sort of decipher?
It's an investigation of your own hardware. You really have to actively hunt for those missing software notifications.
Okay, so I want to actually role play this because the theory is great, but the execution is where people always get stuck.
Okay, sure, let's do it.
Walk me through this. Let's say I do the homework. I realized that yesterday, right after a phone call with my parents, I had a massive knot in my stomach, my breathing was shallow, and I had a splitting headache. I didn't have a conscious feeling at the time, just these physical symptoms. How do I practically engage my brain to fix that in real time? Like, how does slapping a label onto a stomachache diffuse the tension?
This is where the true neurobiology of a mentalization-based treatment really shines. It's a process called affect labeling.
Affect labeling.
Right. So when you get off that phone call and your stomach is in knots, your brain's alarm center, the amygdala, is just firing out of control. It is just heat, action, and raw survival signaling. But the moment you pause, focus on that physical sensation and force your conscious mind to search for a word to describe it.
Like saying out loud, I am feeling sad or I'm feeling disrespected.
Exactly. The moment you attempt to find that language, you literally force blood flow to shift away from the amygdala and up into the prefrontal cortex. That's the logical, language processing, executive part of your brain.
Wait, so just the act of looking for the right word physically changes the blood flow in your brain?
Yes. It's measurable on a brain scan. The prefrontal cortex acts as a neurological dampener on the amygdala. By naming the feeling, you take the raw, overwhelming, chaotic hardware signal and you process it into a structured, manageable data point.
Wow.
The distress beacon literally turns off because the biological system finally registers that the message has been received by the conscious mind.
The notification was clicked, so the alarm stops sounding. The engine stops redlining because you finally took your foot off the gas.
Precisely. The system knows you are aware of the threat or the need, so it stops dumping cortisol into your bloodstream. That is why recognizing and naming your emotions, mentalizing them, is not just some fluffy, feel-good self-help advice.
It's biology.
It is a rigorous neurobiological necessity for emotional regulation. If you don't name it, you can't tame it.
Okay, let's step back and look at the massive terrain we just covered today. We started by separating the raw, universal hardware of biological emotions from the conscious software translation of feelings.
Right.
We explored the magnificent seven: curiosity, fear, anger, lust, love, sadness, and joy, and traced exactly how they evolved to keep mammals alive, protect our boundaries, and build our packs. We exposed how our culture and upbringing scramble our internal soundboards, leading to suspended mobilization and physical exhaustion. And finally, we broke down the literal neuroscience of how the MBT approach uses affect labeling to engage the prefrontal cortex and shut down the amygdala's distress beacons.
It really is a profound shift in how you view your internal world. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final kind of provocative thought to ponder.
Oh, I like those.
We've spent this entire time talking about how we misinterpret our own core survival emotions because our wires got crossed growing up. But what happens when we misinterpret the miswired emotions of the people closest to us?
Oh, wow. Because if my soundboard is scrambled, theirs probably is too.
Exactly. They grew up in culture too. Think about the people in your life. What if the aggressive, off-putting, hostile anger you see in a partner or a parent or maybe a defensive friend is actually a miswired distress beacon of sadness?
That is heavy.
What if they are biologically desperate for connection and terrified of isolation, but their culturally scrambled internal soundboard only knows how to output that vulnerability as aggression? If you start looking at the world through that lens, recognizing the underlying biological survival emotion rather than the messy, corrupted output, how would that completely alter your relationship?
It changes your default reaction from judgment and defensiveness into deep, profound empathy.
Yep.
In the next episode, we will continue with Session 4, titled Recognizing and Regulating Emotions. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow us to stay up to date with our latest episodes.